It's almost as important, but not quite. Good job. Ouch. Thursday, May 14th, regular. We're going to get into Chapter 3 of That Was Then, This Is Now, and no one dies yet in the book, although someone does go to the hospital. Like legit hospital, not like a mom in the hospital.
Legit.
Yes. Did you say regit?
I said legit.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Like regit. That's weird.
Wait, what?
All right, we're on page 43. Oh, yeah, we had the mic. I'll just put this up there to help you guys out. And we get to meet another character from The Outsiders today, too.
Yay!
Yeah. All right. Chapter 3. I'd been hunting all over town for a job. I really needed one, but they're not easy to come by if you're 16 years old with no experience and no contacts. I finally hit upon a great idea. I would ask Charlie for a job. After all, we were friends. He thought I was a smart kid, and having been one himself, he appreciated them. Besides, I figured I'd really dig working in a bar. Charlie's answer was short and to the point. No. I was sitting at the bar, smoking a cigarette, and trying to fight down my anger and disappointment. I've been hitchhiking all over town for a week trying to get a job. Well, why not? I asked, as soon as I thought I could talk without blowing my stack. For one thing, you know how often plainclothes cops stop in? You think they let them... Sorry, hiccups. You think they let a minor work here? You're lucky you can just come in and sit down. Besides, Brian, it gets rough in here late at night. Yeah, you're a rough kid. They all think that. But you better just take my word for it that you're better off someplace else. Like where? There ain't no jobs in this town. I've been all over. Don't think this crummy joint ain't last on my list. I was mad. Charlie didn't get upset, though. He just grinned. Brian, you're not an honest kid in most ways, but you lie like a dog. Take Mark. I wouldn't trust him around anything that wasn't nailed down, but I'd believe anything he said. I'd trust you with my wife, if I had one. I trust your actions, but I double-check most of your statements. You just think about it, and I think you'll come up with a reason why you haven't got a job before now. You just think about it. I was too mad to think about it right then, but I promised myself I would later. I listened to everything Charlie said because he was really smart. He'd been a high school dropout, but he could subtract and add in his head quicker than a machine. And he also read almost everything I had, which was quite a bit of reading. Besides, he'd had it even rougher than me when he was a kid, and now he had his own business and was respected by the cops and the rough guys equally. Okay, if you trust me so much, why don't you let me borrow your car Saturday night? This was a shot in the dark. I never really expected Charlie to let me borrow his car. I mean, I've been thinking about Kathy quite a bit. I'd even called her a couple of times from a payphone since we couldn't pay phone bills anymore. And there was a dance coming up on Saturday night that I wanted to go to, but I didn't have a car. Okay, Brian, you can borrow my car Saturday. Just bring it back with as much gas in the tank as there was when you took it. I almost fell off the bar stool. You mean it? Really? Charlie gave a short laugh. Gesundheit. Yeah, I mean it. But you get into a wreck, and I'll swear you stole it. And I don't care if you let Mark drive it either. Any kid who's been hot wiring cars and driving them for as long as he has without an accident, I'll trust with my car. I didn't know how to say thanks. I've always had trouble thanking people. I don't know why, but Charlie just gave me one of those twisted grins of his, like he knew what my problem was and couldn't care less. I'll come by and get it Saturday, I said finally. Charlie said, okay. I could tell he meant get out of here before I changed my mind. So I got. I wanted to get to a phone and call Kathy. For all I knew, she already had a date. She didn't, thank God. But she did ask me where I was going to get a car. A friend is loaning me his, I said. We may be double dating with Mark. You remember Mark, don't you? Who could forget him, she said. And something gave me a funny feeling. Something about the way she said it gave me a funny feeling. Is this a dressy dance, or a dance, or what? Casual. Pants will be okay. It's just the school gym. Maybe we could go get a Coke afterward? But I was thinking, maybe we'll stop by the park afterward, which is just the way I think. Mark was surprised when I told him who I had a date with. Kathy? Eminem's sister? How old is she? 15 or 16, I guess. You want a double date? Charlie's loaning me his car. I said this casually. Like Charlie loaned me his car every day of the week, but Mark wasn't fooled. He never was by me. No kidding. How'd you manage that? I just shrugged. Truth was, I still didn't know how I managed that. Well, I can't double with you. I already told some guys I'd go stag with them. I thought you would too. Shoot, you haven't taken out a girl since you broke up with Angela Shepherd. You guys know what going stag means?
Go
By yourself, yeah. Going solo.
I love that song. Used to.
Yeah, well, if you'd gone with Angela for a while, you'd be sour on girls too. Man, I hate that chick. Too bad she can't look so good and be so rotten. Sorry. Too bad she can look so good and be so rotten, Mark said sympathetically. He never once said, I told you so. He had tried to tell me a long time ago that Angela's no good, but I hadn't paid any attention. It always seemed like Mark knew the score before I did, but it didn't do me any good. I wouldn't listen to him. I had to find out things for myself. Who all are you going with? I asked. We were in the kitchen doing dishes, and Mark didn't particularly care for washing dishes, but I just couldn't stand a bunch of dirty dishes piled up in the sink. Terry Jones, Williamson, and Curtis. Then I'm glad I'm not going with you. I can't stand that Curtis kid. Come on, Brian, Mark said easily. He's a real nice guy. What'd he ever do to you? Oh, he thinks he's so good looking. That whole family's conceited. Mark was trying to hide a grin. He was laughing at me. You know good and well he's not conceited. He can't help it if he's good looking. To tell the truth, I don't even think he knows he is. You're jealous, Brian, because Angela dumped you to make a play for Curtis, and he was smart enough to leave her alone. You can think what you want, I said, but I was almost laughing myself. Mark knew me pretty well. Sometimes that could be irritating, but most of the time it was funny. Who's that Curtis he's referring to?
Pony Boy.
Pony Boy. Pony Boy Curtis. And so back then they said that Pony Boy was kind of a good-looking kid, so apparently as he's gotten older, he's become more good-looking. And we're going to start talking about that person, Angela, who is apparently a little on the cray-cray side. And so she is on the Shepherd clan.
Wait, is
Um,
this the second book?
What's that?
Is this the second book?
Yes. And so this is where you're going to find out that the shepherds that came by that beat up Dally that one time, this would be their sister. And so this is who Brian used to go out with. But she's really hot and really crazy. And so some of her crazy starts showing up here shortly. Uh-huh.
So, Angela has a crush on Pony Boy?
Yes.
Okay.
But Pony Boy won't go out with her because Pony Boy realizes the fact that she's crazy. And Pony Boy's like, oh, I've had enough crazy in my life. So he won't go out with her, which is going to cause problems because when you say no to crazy, crazy goes, crazy! And so bad things are going to happen. I thought Saturday would never come, but it finally did. I hadn't looked forward to a date in a long time. With Angela, after a while, our dates either ended in a makeout session or a fight. Both got boring. I was kind of bothered about what to wear. It was a casual dance, so about anything would be all right, but I was bugged anyway. I was in the bathroom shaving when Mark popped in. He'd been down to Charlie's to pick up the car for me. Hey, hey, hey! He leaned in the doorway grinning at me. Take it all off. Oh, you're just jealous, because you only have to shave once every 2 weeks. Mark refused to be bugged. You think I want to scrape my face every day? Thanks, but no thanks. I glanced at him just to check out what he was wearing. Mark never paid any attention to how he dressed. I wouldn't be surprised if someday he completely forgot he was supposed to have something on and walked out into the street naked. But somehow he was always dressed right for the occasion. He had on a gold sweatshirt and wheat-colored jeans and tennis shoes. What you wearing? Mark asked. His voice sounded funny. I shrugged. I don't know yet. Mark turned to leave. I gotta go now. I'm supposed to meet Terry over at his house. I left the keys in Charlie's car. As he was leaving, he called over his shoulder. I found this shirt out in the street, and it's lying on the bed if you want to see it. I heard the door slam and the sound of his light running steps from the porch. I finished washing off my face and went into our room. Mark and I shared a bedroom, which is pretty small. We have a small house, and it seemed even smaller with our twin beds. One was against each wall, and that left only a path about 3 feet wide to the closet. I wanted to get a look at this shirt that Mark had found out in the street. It was real funny. That shirt happened to be just my size and dark blue, which happens to be a good color for me. For a minute, I wondered whether he'd bought it or stolen it. They were the same thing to Mark, but I decided I'd forget about it. After all, it's the thought that counts. Mark's clothes were almost all things I had outgrown. I grinned as I buttoned up the shirt. If Mark really cared about clothes, he'd steal some, but he didn't. But he knew me well enough to know that I would be thinking about it. If you have 2 friends in your lifetime, you're lucky. If you have one good friend, you're more than lucky. Charlie's car wasn't anything you'd stop and stare at, but it was decent looking. I felt funny when I stopped in front of Kathy's house. I'd always thought of it as Eminem's house, and now I thought of it as Kathy's house. I never paid any attention to Eminem's parents, and I was about to go crazy trying to remember if I ever said anything rude or had gotten smart with them, but I couldn't remember. If I had, I hope they wouldn't remember. Kathy's father opened the door and he said, "Hi, Brian," friendly enough. I guess as friendly as any father, so I figured I was safe. Eminem was lying on his stomach on the floor reading a book with a little sister sitting on his back pulling his hair. I stepped over him. When Eminem was reading, you could blow up the house around him and he'd never notice. I'm that way myself. Kathy's mother came from the kitchen wiping her hands on her apron. In the kitchen, some more little kids were fighting over who was going to rinse and who was going to dry. "Kathy will be ready in a minute," Mrs. Carlson said. "Please sit down, Brian. We haven't seen you in a while." "I've been out looking for a job," I said, sitting down on a rubber duck. "Mark and I run into Eminem every now and then." "How can you tell him and Kathy apart?" Mr. Carlson said dryly. "I sure can't anymore." "Now, Jim," Mrs. Carlson began nervously, "we agreed not to say anything more about Eminem's hair. Even his own family called him Eminem. And I tried to remember for a second what his real name was, but I couldn't think of it. In the silence, Kathy screeched, "You give me that brush, you brat!" I stifled a laugh. "How have you been doing in school, Brian?" Mrs. Carlson asked. She was pretending she hadn't heard Kathy. This was the usual routine questioning you go through when you have to talk to your date's parents, but I don't mind. At Angela's house, her mother and her stepfather were always fighting and screaming and throwing things, and sometimes her brothers, Tim and Curly, would get in on it, and I'd sort of duck flying objects until Angela came out of her room, cussing and throwing things along with the rest of them. So you can see why sitting in the Carlsons' front room answered questions that wasn't really bothering me. I'm doing pretty well in school, mostly A's and B's. I decided I wouldn't say anything about flunking chemistry. The teacher and I had a personality conflict. And when I want to cause a teacher trouble, you better believe I can do it. "Eminem is flunking math and gym," Mr. Carlson said in the same tone he'd used when talking about Eminem's hair. "How anyone can flunk gym is beyond me." I could tell that Eminem was listening to the conversation, but he was staring at his book, pretending he wasn't. I understood what he was doing. I've stared at a book pretending I couldn't hear what was going on around me too. If people think you can't hear them, they talk as if you couldn't. You can hear some pretty neat stuff that way. "It's not as if Eminem was an invalid," Mr. Carlson was saying when Kathy came out of her room. "I'm ready," she said. She had on a yellow pants outfit that looked real cute on her. I got up. "Okay, let's go." On the way out, she gave Eminem a friendly kick. When we were in the car, she said, "I wish Daddy would leave Eminem alone. He's so sensitive. It hurts him for Dad to tease him about his hair or bawl him out for his grades. It seems to me they should be glad about his other grades. His English teacher says Eminem has the most brilliant mind she's come across in 5 years of teaching, and be glad he's never gotten into any kind of trouble, instead of picking at him because of his hair." She sighed. "I guess since Eminem and I are the oldest, we're the closest. I guess you know about that, though. I forgot you have a brother, too." "Yeah, I know about that," I said. "Of course, I never heard Mom gripe about anything Mark did. He could get away with things I wouldn't dare try. I never resented Mark for it. I took it as a matter of fact that Mark was different from other people, was therefore treated differently." Kathy sighed. "Well, I'm not going to worry about it now. I want to have a good time tonight." She gave me a quick, shy smile. She was sitting close enough for me to put my arm around her, which I did. I was intending to have a good time, too. We could hear the music even before we got there. The band was supposed to be a good one. It was loud enough, which, with a dance, is at least half the way to being good. I was really proud of having such a cute date, and I was hoping Angela would be there. I wanted to show her up. I'd gone with Angela for months, longer than I'd ever gone with anyone. I wanted to show her that I had no intentions of going back to her. She'd been telling everybody that what I would. This was after she made her big play for this Curtis kid, and he'd acted like he didn't know she was alive. Then, she decided she wanted me back. You can imagine how that grabbed me. The dance was going pretty good when we got there. I liked to arrive a little late when things were swinging. I saw a bunch of people I knew. Kathy knew a lot of people too, but not very well. She hadn't dated before she left for school, and I don't think anyone remembered her. She'd been a shy, plain kid. Everybody was staring at us, wondering who she was. I was really feeling great. I liked being the center of attention. Kathy winked at me. She dug it too. I really liked her. I liked her a lot. "Hey, Brian!" It was Mark. I could tell even before I spotted him across the room waving at us. Come on, let's go see Mark. We weaved in and out of the crowd, sometimes stopping to talk. I wasn't too happy when I saw that Mark and Curtis were standing together. Having had one girl ditch me to try for him, I wasn't thrilled with the possibility that it might happen again. "Hi, Kathy," Mark greeted her. He'd been drinking, but I doubt that anyone but me could tell. "I haven't seen you in a long time." "I haven't been here to see," Kathy answered sensibly. "I don't think you know Ponyboy Curtis. This is Kathy Carlson." "Hi," Curtis said. He didn't look too happy. I think he'd heard I wasn't crazy about him. He was a little guy, about the same size as Mark, only with a better build. I think he thought I was going to pick a fight with him. I didn't want to. I guess he couldn't help what Angela Shepherd did. Besides, I'd heard he was a pretty good fighter, even though he didn't have the rep of a tough guy. I watched Kathy. She didn't seem interested in him. The first time Angela saw him, her eyes lit up like a tiger's, so I relaxed. "Where'd you get the booze?" I asked Mark when Kathy couldn't hear. He grinned. "Out in the car. Terry's car. He's got 6 six-packs, and only the 4 of us to drink them. Go out and help yourself. Terry won't mind. He's already passed out in the front seat." Terry had always been a drinker. I decided I'd go out later and have a couple of cans. Maybe I'd get a couple for Kathy. I hoped she wasn't a very heavy drinker. Angela had got pretty expensive with her constant boozing. Kathy and I watched Mark and Curtis as they started toward a group of girls. "Mark's a good kid," I said. "I'd forgotten how beautiful he is," Kathy said. "I know girls who would give their eye teeth for hair that color." I stopped breathing for a second. Kathy was looking at Mark, and I suddenly felt like I'd swallowed a spoonful of red pepper. I felt cold and hot and sick and mad all at once. I only felt it for a second, and then it was gone. But sometimes now I wonder how it would be like to feel that all your life. You know what the crummiest feeling you can have is? To hate the person you love best in the world. "Hi, Brian." The voice was familiar, and I turned around. It was Angela. I just looked at her. She was smiling with that sassy smirk, and I wondered why on earth I'd ever given a damn about her. She was beautiful, little and dark, and even when suddenly all the girls had long straight hair, hers hung to the middle of her waist in ringlets and curls. It was blue-black and shiny. Maybe all that heavy mass wouldn't look good on just anyone, but Angela had the kind of face that would probably be strikingly beautiful even if she shaved her head. But since I knew her so well, I could ignore the way she looked. "Hi, Angel," I said carelessly. "You here with Curtis?" I meant to rub it in. I think he was the first guy she ever went after and didn't get. Her face contorted for a second, and she called me a few names and flounced off. She wasn't famous for having an even temper. "Who was that?" Kathy asked. I wondered if she was jealous. I hoped so anyway. "This chick I used to go with," I answered. Kathy glanced indifferently after Angela. "Certainly uses nice language. Real lady." It hit me that Kathy wasn't jealous of Angela at all. Not for her beauty or for her having gone out with me. She was the first girl I dated who wasn't scared some other chick would show her up. I didn't know what to make of it. In the end, I decided to show that Kathy had more sense than most girls. I wasn't worried about her liking Mark anymore. I can tell when a girl's interested in a guy. Like the minute I saw Angela looking at Curtis, I knew. And I could tell Kathy liked Mark just as a friend, as the brother of the guy she was interested in. Kathy liked me. I could tell that already. And she was a good dancer. We danced almost every dance. We were having so much fun, I forgot all about going out to Terry's car for some beer. They had a cop there at the dance. They always did, but he was ignoring the kids who were staggering around, obviously drunk. He was just there to prevent people from killing each other. Apparently, he wasn't even doing that much, because suddenly, above the music, we heard a scream from the back parking lot. Immediately, everyone started running out there to see what was happening. I didn't. I hate people who stand around at an accident and pry and push and peer. I won't even stop to watch a fight if I don't know either guy who's fighting. "Let's don't go," I said. Kathy nodded. "Okay." "And we're going to stop before we get to find out what just happened." Well, class is over. I have to kick you guys out. You have to go hide in some other teacher's podium.